I think it was just too soon for me to read something like this because this just happened to me. You know how we clown on people and we say, Google is free. So I didn't Google this book before I cracked it open. And as a result, it was not what I thought it was going to be. I was not prepared. Listen, in my defense though, this cover is literally just some James Dean lookalike. How was I supposed to know? Hi, my name's Rachel, and today we're discussing Someday, or Someday times 2, as I keep writing in my notes, by Emma Scott. This was requested by one of my Therapy Bills patrons. Thank you for the request. I sometimes go into books completely blind, especially dependent on genre, and if I think something is just a romance, I'm like, here for a good time, not for a long time, let's crack this sucker open. That might have been a bit of a mistake here, because I should have prepared myself for what this was, which is a contemporary drama featuring a romance, rather than a romance book. It's kind of trauma forward. This is a MLM, not multi-level marketing. This is a gay romance. The book is a romantic drama, I guess you could call it, about a guy named Max who is a nurse who goes to work for this very rich man who owns a pharmaceutical company and ends up falling for this rich man's son. But it's a lot more complicated than that. Again, it's kind of trauma forward. So our two main characters, Max, the nurse, and Silas, the incredibly rich guy, both of these guys have gone through pretty traumatic stuff. The way this book starts versus how the rest of it goes, chapter 1 was honestly quite jarring, because while Max is a nurse for the rest of the book and is really level-headed in comparison to Silas, chapter 1, Max is younger. He's just been kicked out of his home by his father. His family was not accepting of him being queer. Page 1, chapter 1, we're talking about drugs. We're talking about him going on his way to go do sex work to meet ends meet, and he's told by this other guy who never shows up again, hey, you were made for this. And I was like, where are we going? What are we doing? And then the rest of the book, this is cut off from, because after this chapter, we are years later, I believe 7 years later, and he's a nurse. Both him and Silas have a lot of trauma discussed in this book, and working through that was very heavy and also felt like very central to their relationship. Like, working through trauma seems to be like the basis of their relationship, and I just wasn't prepared for this book to have that reading experience where we're talking about in-depth scenes about like conversion therapy. There are slurs being hurled around by homophobic parents. What I assumed from the cover, stupidly, with again doing zero Googling, was I was finally jump-starting my hot girl summer romance era. Now, while there is a romance, this is not the romance vibe that I thought that we were doing. I thought we were kickstarting reading romances this summer. Nay, I am a hot girl in summer, though, and by that I mean, hi, I'm from Florida, and I am sweating my tits off. Not literally though. I'm a smidge less temperature hot thanks to today's sponsor, which is Parade. Parade is a female-owned, all bodies inclusive brand of underwear and apparel. They make the only bras that I wear. I'm super loyal to them. I'm wearing one right now. I'm not gonna like start taking my clothes off. I feel like YouTube has some rules. Just roll the clips. Even before I worked with them, I was a loyal customer of Parade. I fell in love with their bralettes. I've since tried their underwear and their bodysuits, which I also love. Parade makes sustainable and affordable bras, underwear, bralettes, and apparel in a variety of sizes, including up to 5X. I just recently got some new pieces in the mail that I'm obsessed with. I'm wearing one right now. It's the cherries one, which I just adore. They are the most comfortable underwear, bralettes, and bodysuits that I have ever owned. Like, love of my life. They are made with the mesh called Silky Mesh, which is this buttery soft yet breathable material. So I'm not literally sweating the girls off. It is 95 degrees in Florida currently, and it is only climbing. Comfort and not sweating are always my priorities in a hot girl summer, temperature hot. Give yourself the gift of comfortable, non-sweaty titties. Join me in being a loyal Parade girly. You can click the link below and use the code READS30 for 30% off, site-wide, excluding the sales items. Join me in Sweat-Free Titty Committee for this summer. Hit that link below, use code READS30, and thank you so much to Parade for sponsoring today's video. So again, I was expecting something like, what's a recent romance I read? I was rereading this one by Talia Hibbert, which I can't remember the name of, which has some drama in it, but I would say is more like romance and even like spice forward. Or like another one that I read recently was Deep End by Hallie Hazelwood, which like has the character having some like trauma, but I feel like still it was like romance and spice forward. This has some schmeck scenes in it, but I wouldn't say that it's spice forward. I would say that it's like drama forward, romance is there. It does end in a happily ever after, so I guess you can still say that this is first and foremost maybe a romance book, but to me it's more of like a contemporary drama. It's more like, and I want to be clear here that I'm not saying this is as bad as Colleen Hoover. I don't even think this book is bad. What I'm saying is Colleen Hoover's books I would not consider romances. So for instance, I wouldn't consider Ugly Love a romance, but technically it gets classified that way, no? But that book is like full of trauma regularly on like a lot of pages, which is fine, just not when Colleen does it. But like as a rule for a book, you can write that way, it's fine. I just was not anticipating that. So if you go into this, you want to be aware of what you're actually reading, because you're dealing with a lot of things like substance abuse talked about on page. You're dealing with ableism on the page because Silas's younger brother has autism, which in the book is referred to as Asperger's, which we no longer use. You can click a link below for information on why. Silas's father, this very rich guy who owns this pharmaceutical company, is very homophobic and ableist and uses a lot of slurs regarding both of those things. And then there's, trauma surrounding family abandonment. There's also, again, we're talking about and going over scenes where Silas was sent into Alaska's wilderness to do conversion therapy. And so we sort of get some flashbacks a little bit to that, which are very heavy. So we're dealing with trauma, we're dealing with recovery, we're dealing with coming to terms with your queer identity and coming out, and doing so, there's a forced coming out technically, and then we're doing like the whole forgiving your family for being homophobic, and they kind of sort of say sorry at the end. So this is a standalone book. It is told in alternating perspectives between Silas and Max. It is told in first person, so we're getting like very intimate access to both of the protagonists and all of the emotions that they're going through. Max has rebuilt his life after dealing with homelessness and addiction. There was a guy who might have been a cop who took him in and helped him get his life back on track after his family derailed it and threw him out and caused him to end up dealing with substance abuse. So he has worked in the ER, and now he is working as a private nurse for Silas's father. Meanwhile, Silas is this very successful guy who is carrying the weight of years of emotional repression and also abuse, and still every day dealing with verbal abuse from his father, who owns this pharmaceutical company, who creates this drug called Oxy something or other. They actually meet, Silas and Max actually meet in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and then lo and behold, Max shows up at the house because he is Silas's father's nurse. So at first they have this more intimate meeting where, it's Narcotics Anonymous, so there's a vulnerability there. But then they, after this, enter into this more professional capacity of a relationship, which then develops into something deeper. As they learn more about each other, Silas, he's not allowed to do very much because of fear of pushback from his father. And I think that it's important that we did go over the fact that Silas just wants to be loved, even by a shitty dad. And I get that. This is part of why I wasn't prepared to read this book, because I'm still dealing with so much father issues on my own. I didn't see my dad for 2 years, and I just recently saw him for the first time in April, and I'm still processing that, and I don't know that I was ready to read this. I am glad that I read it, but I don't know that I was quite ready for it. So Silas has a hard time finding anything to do with himself that it isn't tailor-made to keep his dad from basically verbally abusing him. Silas is kind of like a rough and rugged guy, and all of this is like a facade that he puts on for his dad, that he feels like he has to because he went through conversion therapy, and he was basically told your dad will love you if you become this version of yourself that isn't gay and is more manly. And he was very much physically abused in conversion therapy, but he also very much loves his older brother, who is autistic. His brother, let me just tell you where his brother's currently at in the headspace, right? His brother sort of latches on to either time periods or people, and currently the time period that he has sort of become enamored with is the time of Charles Dickens. So his brother talks with an accent and says, how do you do, old chap, and stuff like that, which drives the father nuts, and he calls his son slurs. But Silas is very dead set on taking care of his brother, and this is the only, like, this is one of the only, like, vulnerabilities about him is taking care of his brother, who would have inherited the family business but cannot, so it's gonna fall to Silas. But this is also something that Silas is dealing with, where it's like his dad doesn't want him to inherit the family business. Like, he'll never be good enough for his dad. So the family business might end up going to this other guy who works for the company, who's like a total sleazebag. Silas is also a incredible piano player. Oh my god, I'm getting flashbacks to the Mister. Also, like, a drama heavy romance book that I feel like was so irresponsibly made. Anyway, this book was very intentional about what it was trying to portray and be, like, very sensitive about these topics. Like, I'm not saying it got it right all the time, but I think that there was, like, an attempt, whereas E.L. James was just like, how do I create drama for drama's sake? But often, because they are so often discussing very painful, traumatic experiences, and you're watching them experience homophobia and addiction and conversion therapy and just trauma after trauma. I think these are all approached, again, with sensitivity, but sometimes the book could feel kind of melodramatic a little bit. I do think that, again, the author did try very hard in a way that other books simply did not even try. Looking at you again, E.L. James and Colleen Hoover. I think that Emma Scott really did go out of their way to balance between darkness and hope and pain and healing. I just wonder if maybe we missed the mark a couple of times, but not for lack of trying. The romance between Max and Silas, I would say, is very tender, though. It's crafted with, like, deep emotion, like, it really emotionally resonates with you. But again, it's like a really emotional book, but they do feel like real people. There is, like, an element of, like, realism here that makes their journey feel authentic. It makes it feel like they do exist in Seattle outside of this book. Like, you could go to Seattle and you could find them and then sit down for coffee and end up, like, bawling your eyes out at the end because you're gonna have to unpack a lot of trauma with them. And just as an aside, like, on a line level, this book is written well. Again, like, taking the opportunity to dunk on Colleen Hoover once again. The lines that she writes, I often think, did you go back over them? And if you didn't, did your editor fall asleep? Did your editor just not care because you know that the book's going to sell either way? What do you mean by that description? This sounds ridiculous. And I know that after reading 3 Colleen Hoover books and suffering through every single one of them. I think that Emma balances the description and the dialogue very well, making a book that is emotive and accessible, avoids descriptions that don't make any sense, while also it's not under-described. Like, I feel like I was there, but I also wasn't scratching my head like, what do you mean by that? Again, looking at you, Colleen. We were able to create, like, very powerful emotion in language that was, like, not overly complex. I think that the side characters here added to, like, the book overall being well written, because again, like, this book is a lot of emotion. We add in more characters. So Silas technically has a fiance who is a woman who is basically there to make his dad happy, but they don't have any sort of, like, physical relationship. They are just friends, not for lack of trying on her part. She does want that from him, even just, like, in a friend capacity, like a friends with benefits capacity, but he's not interested. And he tries to play this off as him being, like, just not interested, maybe asexual. She doesn't get a huge amount of page time, but the page time that we did get her was used well. I feel like the page time that we got the most of with side characters was the brother. Now, the autism rep, I'm not sure if that would pass everybody's check. My son's autistic, but I try not to, like, position myself as an authority unless there are, like, glaring stereotypes. I'm like, I'm not going to say whether or not I think that this rep did a harmful depiction or not. I think it was okay. It's just be prepared to go into a book where ableist slurs are used by the father. It is checked, I think, at least most of the time, if not all the time, but just know that, like, the ableism is there. And also, it is the brother who outs Silas to the media, so I feel like that's probably not going to feel like a great reading experience to everybody. I also think that Max's family, Max comes from a family with his sister, her name is Rachel. God, how many freaking Rachels are we gonna pop up in books this year? I just read Silver Elite and that had a Rachel. Rachel, his sibling, got more page time than his other siblings, but we also see Max's father and Max's mother, and we deal with them sort of in different varying ways being kind of homophobic to him, where Rachel was just sort of like passive about it and didn't really do anything to protect her brother and has to realize like how hurtful that was. The mother sort of makes excuses for the dad's homophobia, and the dad sort of has to come around. I'll talk about the dad in a little bit. I think the author really had like very specific people who she created that she wanted to convey to you, and I think it was done with a lot of love. There was just so much trauma that I wasn't prepared for. How many times am I gonna say that? I think that the shining star here is the character work. They really did feel like real people to me. I just didn't like that jarring like jump from Max in chapter 1 to the next chapter is like years later. I just didn't really need that. And I also think it's weird that we like did that for Max but not for Silas, who at a similar age was going through conversion therapy. I just don't really understand the like choices that we made here in the narrative. And also like as far as how we structured this book, the ending went on so long. I was like, oh my God, I still have 45 minutes left in this audiobook at 2.5 speed. Why? The story's done. Wrap it up. We get it. Everybody said sorry for being homophobic. I appreciate that Max was this really vulnerable guy whose empathy and self-awareness and understanding of the stuff that Silas was dealing with just made him like, I mean, you just wanted to hug him. His recovery journey is basically done. It is done. It felt a little, and a few things felt like this in the book. It felt a little like neat and tidy, like all done, all done. So I go to NA and I don't deal with that anymore. So I think that some of this is going to feel a little bit like too good to be true, but I don't know how I would go about like fixing that. Like, I don't know what specific advice I would give to make it feel less like that. You know what I mean? Like, I struggle with this book really to like, if I approach it from, if I had beta read this, how would I fix it? Which I can do with fantasy books, but with this one, I don't know what specific advice I would give where I'd be like, I feel like this could have been better if we just do. I don't know what the just do part is. Like, I don't know what I would recommend. And then Silas, on the other hand, like Max is queer and he's out and he's fine with it. He has come to, understand that his family is homophobic, but he does not have to internalize that. Silas, on the other hand, has deeply internalized that homophobia. He really struggles to create an identity for himself that is authentic because of all of these expectations that have started young in childhood. And his mom died, by the way, when he was a teenager. Like, he has so much trauma. He really has like no ability to create an identity for himself. He's just stuck. I will say that I appreciate that this book was like a slower build of romantic attraction and like physical attraction. I'm glad that we like built that emotional vulnerability where Silas like slowly opens up to Max. Again, this was part of why they felt so real to me, because we had these like deep conversations that really like built that relationship. But again, these deep conversations are all so much about trauma. We're dealing addiction, mental illness, conversion therapy, homophobia. It's just a lot. And they are essential parts of the characters' backstories, don't get me wrong. It's just that I wanted a little bit more like them building a relationship on fun and them building I do appreciate that. Like, I can understand that it's hard to do that because like one of the things you talk about is like, what media do you like? What media do we have in common? And Silas doesn't really have any because he wasn't allowed to watch any. So Max has to explain a lot of movies to Silas. I don't know. I just needed a little bit of balance to kind of like even out all the trauma that we constantly talked about. And I think that this is like personal to me because again, I wasn't ready for that. And also a lot of it has to do with homophobic dads. And man, do I have a homophobic dad. Like, some of my earliest memories are my dad saying homophobic things. I dealt with a lot of internalized homophobia because of my upbringing. One of the, like, not to come out. Never to verbalize that you are having feelings for other girls if you're a girl, because that like it's not called conversion therapy when you are in fundamentalist evangelical Christianity. It's called like retraining, or it depends on what sect you're from, or going through the program. It just depends. It didn't really have a name in the sect that I was in, but you would go through a process to ungay you. And so that, and it's sort of like not really discussed, and you sort of live in fear of it, so you don't say anything, and you try to believe these things that they tell you, where it's like, you're not attracted to other girls, you're just admiring their beauty. And you're like, yeah, I'm admiring their beauty. Why do I want to kiss them? I also appreciate that this is a book that talks about failing. Like, it's not just Fundyland that fails queer kids. It's also, regular family. Max's family, what is it called? They're not Orthodox Jewish. They do pray at dinner. I don't know if this Jewish rep is done from an own voices author or if it's correct or anything. I would need to consult with M. If you're watching this, maybe we can talk about this later. I normally run by my friend M whenever there's Jewish rep in a book, and I'm not sure if it's correct or not. But the point is, it's not just Christians who create trauma on queer kids. I mean, secular families like Silas's do, and Max's family did. All of this bigotry, all of these different places where bigotry against queer folks, queer kids is found, the book was critiquing, the fact that we fail so many kids, even across like class barriers, we fail so many kids just because they are queer. I think that discussions of trauma were handled more responsibly in this book than, again, like Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Right? There were just a lot of moments where it felt so heavy that it felt like saturated with trauma. And you start to get kind of like fatigued by reading this, especially when you were going into this not expecting that. Again, and part of that's like my fault for not looking it up first, right? But like with every new story of like conversion therapy from Silas, I was like, oh, I have to like take breaks listening to this in the car. And then like in the last third of the book, we keep having these confrontations of like homophobic parents and such and all, and other things with like the company, because Silas's father's company has been doing some stuff to basically like make the opioid crisis worse, because they know that they can benefit financially from it. And so it's just a lot, and we packed a lot of it into the final third, and I was just weary by the end of this. I felt like the pacing there was kind of where we're just like throwing so much in the end, especially because we separate Silas and Maxwell, because Max is like, if you're not ready to stand up to your father for you, not for me, but for you, then this is not going to work. Like we have to be separate. Not breaking up so much because we're not really boyfriend and boyfriend or anything, but you have to take this next step to finally break free from all of this hiding that you're doing. And I can't stay with you here. Like I need you to do that for you before we can be something. And so you're dealing with like a lot of Silas on his own, dealing with this pharmaceutical company that is garbage, his father who is a trash human, his brother outing him at his engagement party in front of the news and his father. And then you're also dealing with Maxwell going home and talking to his homophobic family and being like, here's how you hurt me. And then here's where it really started to get like, and it was a rainy day and I had a headache. So it all just sort of compounded to make like a kind of rough reading experience for me as a reader. This is not prescriptive. You probably are not going to feel like this. But there's this moment where Max and his family finally get back together. So he's seeing his dad for the first time in years since his dad kicked him out. He's seen his sister, he's seen his mom. He's explained to them like, Dad really hurt me. You guys didn't stick up for me. I was abandoned. I had to, somebody else had to intervene to help me get my life back on track. And you guys have like emotionally and physically abandoned me. And that hurt. And so they decide, okay, we can get together and we're going to go to a public place to get together. They get there and his dad, like it's hard for them to hear because they're at like a public place. They're not really talking about what happened. And for Max, this is like, what are we even doing? And I think it was just too soon for me to read something like this because this just happened to me. So for context, I don't talk to my dad. I have him blocked everywhere and I used to talk to him, but he and I do not get along because he is pretty bigoted. One of those ways is homophobia, but he's bigoted in a lot of other ways because, he's fundy in a different way than my mom, but he is fundy nonetheless. Specifically, I would say that my dad is like incredibly so a Christian nationalist, and it's really uncomfortable to witness. It's incredibly hard to justify 99% of what he says in a day. I don't want to be around him. And he also like clearly does not care about me and my kids. And once I realized that, I was like, he said something to that effect, and I said, all right, we're done. Don't contact me anymore. So I did go to dinner with at my aunt's house because they kept asking, and I really only went because I was told that my nieces were gonna be there. And I'm like, I'll do anything to get my kids together with my nieces. So I went, and my nieces weren't even there, which sucked. When I got there, we'll call my father Gary. Gary was there, and my aunt says, all right, get this over with. And I said, okay. So I said, I'm going to say hello, and I'm going to say goodbye, and I don't plan to say anything else because I am here to see you guys, and I'm here for my kids to hang out, and they can interact with him, but I don't wish to. And I had even I had to convince Carlos to have us do this because he doesn't want our kids around Gary. So we get there and Gary he says hello, and I say hello, and he doesn't talk to my kids, and we're there for like 5 hours, and he barely says 2 words to my kids, but he spends a whole heck of a lot of time, and I watched, because I went and checked, fighting with people on Twitter. And I was like, so that's how you spent your time while I was there. But what's funny is, before he left, he's the reason we don't talk. And before we left, I'm bagging up trash, I'm cleaning up. Meanwhile, he's ignored, all of us, including my kids, for like a couple of hours at this point. Sit on his phone, arguing with leftists on Twitter. He turns to me with tears in his eyes, and he says, "Rachel, I love you." And I was just like, okay. And I said, "Okay, good to see you, Gary." Which was a lie, because it wasn't even good to see him. Like, you ignored my kids for hours. And that's really how it was, like, in this book as well, where it's like, you made this like so uncomfortable. We can't even talk about things, like, and we're here and we're not even discussing, like, what is the point of this? It was in a way like almost healing to see, like, man, if I could wave a magic wand and have Gary be the way that I wish Gary treated me and my kids, right? I would do it. And I would hope that it looked like what Maxwell got in the end of this book, where his dad was finally like, okay, I'll work through my discomfort, and what matters is, like, we get to be together, and I don't have to prioritize. The issues between us are not that I'm queer, although I'm sure that's an issue now that he's figured it out. The issues between us are because of, like, I am a leftist, and I left Christianity and other stuff, right? But although I don't know how he wouldn't have known that I was gay. I had a girlfriend in high school, and I did my darndest to, like, play it off, but it seems like in hindsight, it seems pretty obvious that me and her were together. If I could wave a magic wand, I would hope that it ended up like that, but also, like, that isn't how it ends up for so many of us. For Silas, it also got, like, I don't know, I wasn't ready to read about, like, somebody else getting a happy, like, turnout with their dad after sitting at an awkward dinner because I just did this, right? I just wasn't ready to read about that, because that's not the turnout that I got. And that "Rachel, I love you" was, like, very emotionally manipulative, because it was done in front of my sister, and I can tell that it's just like, you had 5 hours to talk to me and ask my kid how's kindergarten, or ask my son what video games you're into, but instead you waited till everybody except my sister was gone, and you turned and said, "Rachel, I love you." Like, and I'm so frustrated and saddened by that. And so, like, I wasn't ready to read about somebody else dealing with a similar dad and being at a similar situation, and then having him, like, the dinner situation, I was like, that's exactly what I'm going through. But then in the end, they go to a secondary dinner, which the end of this book is so long. And now it's like, now they're able to talk, and I'm like, no, I'm still ready to sit with, like, original dinner and all the problems. Like, I'm not ready to read this. If we're gonna do trauma, like, I still want to stay where I'm at, I guess. I don't know, this again is, like, so not prescriptive, but because it's so similar to what I just dealt with seeing Gary in April, I don't know what to tell you. It's just, I wasn't ready to read about a bigoted dad that looks and acts and sounds so much like mine, except my dad is not Jewish. My dad is anti-Semitic. He wouldn't call himself that, but he is. Anyways, now that I've trauma dumped on you all, I just thought that it would help to, like, understand where I was coming from with reading those scenes, and why, like, some of them hit and some of them missed. With Silas, in the end of the book, these two get married. Like, good for them, happy for them. And at the rehearsal dinner, the dad, Silas is very rich, pharmaceutical guy, sleazebag dad, shows up, and he says, well, I reported the guy who abused you in conversion therapy. And I was like, again, when I talk about the trauma that I went through in Christian schools, Gary is like, I don't care, basically. Like, he just sort of writes it off. And I'm like, you paid for that. And so I wasn't ready for that. I just wasn't ready for the forgiveness after all that trauma. And that's also where I'm at with my own dad. So, like, having two dads who, like, in ways mirror my Gary, and then having them get forgiven in the end, I was like, I'm just not ready, especially after, like, not only in my own life have I experienced so much trauma, but in the book I did. And, like, I just was not prepared. I'm happy for them, though. Like, I'm glad that they get their happy ending. I think they deserve that. And I think all of us who go through trauma from, like, being queer, being different, dealing with parents who are shitty and sometimes abusive in different ways, I think we do deserve those happy endings to be written into books. But I know that some people are going to feel like this was too much trauma. I feel like it was a lot, but it wasn't enough that I, like, rated it, below 3 stars. I would say this is like a 3.5, maybe a 4, because I genuinely do like the characters, but I think I really should have gone into this like prepared to think more about Gary. And I didn't want to think about Gary. I was expecting like fun summer romance, hot girl summer. And instead I'm like, oh God, now I'm thinking about Gary. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Someday Someday by Emma Scott. Let me know if you've read this, and let me know if you've ever gone into a book, like which book you've gone into and you're thinking like, wow, this is going to be fun. You're like, wow, why am I crying so hard? Because that's kind of I was like, I don't really want to be at this dinner right now while reading this book. So yeah, let me know what experiences you've had with that. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, leave I don't know, is there a piano emoji? Because Silas plays piano. Leave a piano emoji. Or they liked to get Chinese food together, which was quite cute. So leave like a, I don't know, noodle dish or something. I'm gonna sing that Noodle Time song from that one movie with the little girl who gets a robot friend. Everyone knows it's noodle time. Okay, I think I need to go eat something. I think that this has devolved into just me being hungry. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Comments and questions go down below. See you next time. Bye. And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend. Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Andy, Ashley 8, Astra, Beck, Call Me Kodiak, Choco's Homesick for Taiwan, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Eric, Jade L, John E, Jory, Julie D, K, Kai Brecker has not read Six of Crows, Kaleno K, Kelly K, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly, Lex, Other Lex, Lily, Lisa L, Raptor, Max B, Megwin Rose, Melissa, Minby, Mixer Boneless, Not So Secretly a Skeleton, Peggy Luhu, Piloting SRN, Rain, Reese, SJ, Samar, Scarlet, Spoopy, Steph B, Super SMA Girl Lily, 3 Raccoons in a Trench Coat, Tori, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend. And a huge thank you to my potato starch Marxists, Adrian, Aaron, Alejandra, Ali Oxenfree, Althea, Amanda D, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Barry B, Beck Lowe, Binging for Soup, Blue Moon Syrup, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Bree, Bridget 108, Kate, Caitlin, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate W, Kat Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Cosmic Frog, Courtney, Darius, Danielle, Danita, Darren, Desiree Michelle, Dilf Enthusiast, Dorothea Supports Public Education, Draco-chan, Drive-By Thinker, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Aaron with 2 E's, Erica May, Aaron Starlight, Gadarn, Hannah C, Helen P, Harising, JM Tennant, Jackalope Max, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Genderqueer, Jenny G, Jessie Ives, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, who I just met in person at Bugnet Fest, and I was so excited. Caitlin M, Catherine, Katie, Katrina, Kayla, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTV, Kayana, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Lindsay M, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Macy Jane, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Megan, Malara, May, Mima Who, Morgan P, Myth Lesbian, Nicole G, Oxford, supporter, same, Paige P, Penelope, Penny Chilling, Foxglove, Pick a God and Pray, Plague Carrier, Pandemonium, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Rebecca R, Ren, Flynn, Rhea, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Sikoria, Sadie, Saintbringer, Sakia Lume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shannon, Sheen Onion, Sean, Sophie, Talia, That One Cute Chick, This Is Not a Trap, Tiana, Too Thick to Work to Get Today, Triple M, Tito Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.